welcome to WrestleWolf. I am Damian Gibson, and this is our review of AEW Dynamite, which we do every week. And joining me, as always, is the man, the mystery, the enigma. It's Matthew.
Hello, how are you going?
Good, man. Good. This is weird. We can see each other for the first time. Both of us are freaking out.
It was weird because I could see you, and now I've got my notes up. So now I'm like trying to get the Google Docs screen to be like half the screen, so I can see you again. Because like now I'm aware of the fact that you can see me, but I can't see you. Which anyway, this is deep behind the curtain. This is the kind of thing Vince Russo would use in like an on-screen, major. The audiences don't care is what I'm trying to say.
We've invested in some new gear because you guys are actually listening to us, and we felt like we had to sort of raise our game slightly. I mean, you'll still get the terrible content, but the sound will be awesome.
This I was very excited about this episode while watching it, and we try not to text each other really during it. We sort of text each other real vagaries, like I hated something that happens, tell you about it later, or like, holy shit, this is awesome. This episode seemed specifically made for two men doing a WCW podcast.
Yeah, well, there's quite a bit of WCW lap over. That's not a term? Overlap? That's the word that I'm looking for.
Everyone understood what lap over was. I think like people are too strict about the English language. Like you've just got to be confident and say a word. You're like Donald Trump. Yeah. Like you watch that interview you just be confident. It's like we have less coronavirus cases than the whole world. And it's like, it's because you're a fraction of the world. Like obviously you have less. Anyway, sorry, we've gotten political.
I don't know if that interview went very well for Donald the other day, to be honest, from what I've seen.
Keep your political hot takes to yourself.
I just, I'm no pundit, but I don't know if that helped his re-election chances much. All right, let's get into Dynamite, man. So we started. Now, initially, I was like, "Oh no, Excalibur," but just to peek behind the AEW curtain, they are recording 2 episodes at once at the moment in advance.
Okay, that makes
sense.
So
that was why no Excalibur again this week. So, but I hope it's not a permanent thing. And I have heard some like sort of innuendo is not the right word, but sort of some rumblings that Taz was brought on board at the insistence of JR, but I can't substantiate that. It's just sort of like rumors that are floating around.
Well, let's hope that's not the case, because Taz is very, very, very good, but Excalibur's not the problem with the AEW Dynamite commentary.
I find, and I'm not gonna talk about JR this week because I just won't. It's just boring. I listen back to the episodes and I sound like him complaining about him, but he just doesn't. Excalibur gets it. Excalibur gets AEW. He's been on the ground watching all of these guys develop and the scene develop so we can have an AEW Dynamite. And those 3 guys who are on commentary, as good as they are and as legendary as they are, they don't. I mean, Taz gets it more than the other 2 because he's been doing Busted Open Radio and has kept his ear to the ground probably better than... And, Tony and JR are old men. Like, why would they be? But I just noticed it a lot tonight that Excalibur wasn't there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't say I noticed initially that he wasn't, but I really enjoyed Taz. So that probably eclipsed my missing.
No, I get that.
Excalibur.
Yeah, but it's just I genuinely like taking JR out. Anyway, we take JR out, put Excalibur in. To me, that just makes sense. Taz. Anyway, so we had the 6-on-6 tag team match. Let me see if I can remember everybody. FTR, Page and Omega, and the Young Bucks. That's the easy part. And I'm going to say the Dark Order on the on the other side of the ring in a 6-on-6 tag match. These are the kind of matches where it's really difficult to sort of recap what happened because so many different things do happen. I'll just quickly give my opinion and hand over to you. I felt like I was just I was on a call to an angry customer while this match was happening, so I was a little bit distracted. Sorry, this is the way, we don't do this full time, so we both have full-time jobs, so we're trying to fit this around, and this was one of these circumstances where I was like, I don't have time. I have to do both of these things at the same time. So I missed bits and pieces of it, but to me, it felt like the match was a little bit messy. Is that fair, or is it just I didn't watch it properly?
No, it was partially because AEW do have the issue with the refs not stopping blatant interferences during tag team matches and the rules not really mattering, which sometimes works really well. But also there's 12 people in one match. Like I was sort of hoping this would be a little bit more Butcher and the Blade versus the Bucks rather than just opening. And I quite enjoyed the match, but I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more if it had have opened up with, the Young Bucks and FTR and that busting into the Dark Order's, I don't know, Scientology compound and then wrestling their way to the ring. And that's okay. They can't do that for every match, and it keeps the Butcher and the Blade special, which is important to me. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more story, given the crazy spots do suffer a little bit without a crowd.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny took some pretty hefty bumps in this match from what I saw. Can you explain to me what happened with FTR? One of them, like Dax, got injured, and so both of them went back?
I don't know what their names are because they're stupid, but one of them got one of the FTR got injured. One of them got injured. Both of them went back, and Page went with them as well.
Oh, right. But then he came back later in the match to
cementing the fact that your four horsemen is going to be FTR, Page, and Cody, even though you don't believe that.
Is it Horseman talk? Are we up to Horseman talk already? I suppose this is probably the match for it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's got 3 of the upcoming horsemen in it.
You'd think, well, like Page and FTR, I don't know. I heard another theory, right? We're just going to throw out the whole running order to talk about the four horsemen. I heard another theory that Page and FTR will double cross Page. Hang on, was this your theory?
I think that's my theory.
Yeah, that is your theory.
And I think that would be cool because I think ideally Page that pushes Page to top baby face, looking really, really cool. Like, I mean, to be honest, like if you want to do the four horsemen properly at the title match at All Out in 4 weeks, you have FTR and Cody or whoever's going to be that third person, not Sean Spears, come out and help. Like the referee gets knocked out and they come out, fall on Moxley, and MJF wins the title and is the Ric Flair of that group. He basically is Ric Flair in the 80s. Him with a crew would be cool. I mean, he's got a crew we will get to later, but not quite FTR's level, I would say.
There are so many different pieces of evidence that people can point to as far as the Horsemen are concerned. And, I mean, Cody started doing the figure 4 or just... Was that against Eddie Kingston, just out of nowhere?
Yeah.
He's just started doing the figure 4. So there's that. So that backs up your theory. MJF is the most Ric Flair wrestler since Ric Flair. We were talking like, NWA Ric Flair
And I think having the, if you're going to bring back the Horsemen, you sort of have to have the title as well. The next title match is Moxley MJF. If they're going to, please don't have John Moxley in the Four Horsemen. It does
no, they wouldn't do that.
He'd be the Mongo of. He already is the Mongo.
But now you're really starting to stretch your hatred of John Moxley, comparing John Moxley to Mongo. I mean, like, I love both of them. That's probably the only similarity that they share. MJF, Cody, and FTR would be an amazing.
Or just, I mean, it doesn't really matter who that third person is, whether it's another heel who comes in to challenge for the TNT title. That would be perfectly acceptable if they want to keep the Elite together as sort of a face team for a while. I think that's perfectly fine. And then you just have Hangman Page be Dusty.
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to make. When Hangman Page came back to this match from out the back, he looked like a star, kayfabe wise, and they were sort of pushing that. But he really did look like one to me as well. Compared to when you compare him, especially to the beginnings of AEW to now, his self-confidence and belief is just palpable. Like, he can just see it through the screen that, like, he believes that he can be one of the top guys in AEW and should be. Like, your eyes gravitate towards him when he's on screen.
Yeah, he's definitely the face blue chipper of AEW.
I think so. Yeah, him and AEW, him and MGF. God, I cannot speak today. Sorry, man. Him and MJF. Everyone knows what I'm trying to say. MJF, bad guy. Hangman Page, good guy. 20 years we'll be watching these guys.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a sort of insinuation. Well, not an insinuation. It looks like there's going to be a Page versus Brody Lee singles program coming out of this, which I'm into.
Like, I think it was good to have the Dark Order and to have, it was Brody pinned Page, didn't he?
Yeah.
I forgot who took the pin, but it was good to have them win, because you can't just constantly have them lose every single match and still be wrestling in a company. But Brody Lee looked vile and, crazy and massive, fucking massive. There was a point where, like, Colt Cabana was still doing the "Are they evil?" kind of thing, and it's like, Colt, the guy next to you is named Evil. Like, he's Evil Uno. Like, it's not like he's like not like Friendship Stewart. Like, it's Evil Uno. You have to suspect that there might be something else going on.
I thought, I've actually got that in my notes as well. That was right at the end when they won and MJF sort of like almost doing a Daniel Bryan, like, fingers up in the air, sort of yes type chant thing, but still looking confused, like trying to portray to us like, oh, I don't know what's going on, I'm just happy to win. It's like, how long have we been saying this? Like 4 weeks now, where we're saying, like, you just have to pull the trigger on Colt as being bad.
And bad Colt Cabana is good. Like, I think people who maybe have a shallower knowledge of him, maybe just from the podcast or the as compared to me, who is a historian of Colt Cabana, he had a heel run in Ring of Honor and it was exceptional. It was really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, people who there are wrestlers who are so good in front of the camera and on mic that you can tell that they're, that they can do both. And Colt Cabana is going to be, 100% going to be one of those guys.
Well, so I think turn him heel and then have. So last night you messaged me asking if I'd heard of Danhausen, the wrestler, and I hadn't, to my disgrace. And then I spent about 2 hours over the last 24 hours. 2 of the hours that I've spent have been looking at Danhausen on the internet. He's my favorite thing. Bring him into feud with Colt Cabana. That would be great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is his best mates with Warhorse as well. There's a whole bunch of Warhorse and him stuff on Twitter. They seem to interact with each other quite a bit.
I was wondering how you were going to get Warhorse in there.
Well, I was just going to say flat out, I've been harassing anyone I can on Twitter to find out if he's been signed. I'm trying to get an Eddie Kingston type hashtag thing happening, and no one's on board. I don't know what's going on.
His official theme is on the new AEW CD, which
that's got to be something. They can't just they can't put him out there once, put his theme on the soundtrack, and then piss him off, right?
You'd hope not. I mean, you want a T-shirt, 10 years, a movie, action figures, cups.
Yeah,
I don't know,
and I'll buy it all. I've already bought. Oh, look, man, you know I've already bought a Mark from his Pro Wrestling Tee store. So, what did I say, Mark? I've bought a T-shirt from his Pro Wrestling Tee store. I've had too much coffee today. This is going to be a terrible podcast from me.
This is actually quite reflective, I think, of the episode of Dynamite. That was a really strange episode. It was.
Yeah, it was.
It was really fun, but the next part of this show is the best friends arriving in the minivan, and Tony Schiavone going, "That's Sue's van. Sue's van," and just really calling it Sue's van. Really
yeah, Sue is just a character in AEW now, which is fantastic. So that happened. They're there for their match later on in the night between Santana and Ortiz.
I'm looking forward to Sue Beretta on a pole, Buff Bagwell thumb style.
No. Next up, we have Matt's favorite part of the night, which is Jon Moxley cutting a promo straight to camera. I can see you now, actually, your shoulders slumping as I bring up Jon Moxley.
It's not as cool to ramble when you're a 40-year-old man as it is when you're 20. And I say this, and both of us are closer to Jon Moxley's age than we are to young Jon Moxley, CZW Jon Moxley's age. But the rambling is just be coherent. Come on.
I actually have a completely different opinion on it. I was starting to get to the point where I was agreeing with you. I was like, yeah, it's sort of the same thing every week. It's, Mox saying essentially saying I'm a hard ass and, don't get in my way or I'll kill you, essentially. This week I didn't mind. It was
this did put Darby over.
He's always got the same, he always delivers his promos in the same way. And I felt like this week it was a little bit different. It was a little bit more... the commentators probably overdid it with how heartfelt it was and all that kind of thing throughout the night. But I actually liked the promo itself of him comparing himself to Darby Allin and seeing himself in Darby Allin and knowing that no matter what happens in the match, that he's essentially going to have to choke him out or put him down, and Darby Allin's going to keep getting back up. And he doesn't want to have to hurt him, but he knows he probably will have to because it's a championship match.
And they did run with that story sort of through right to the end of the episode.
Yeah, and they did and to be fair to the three guys on commentary, they did do a good job of actually continuing to bring that up. And then later on, when we get to that match, they did a really good job of incorporating all of that into the story of the match. So I don't know. As much as I know I get worried about sticking up for Jon Moxley because I feel like Brian Cage is going to be sent to my house by yourself, and I'll get.
We have pretty strict restrictions in Melbourne, and he certainly doesn't live within 5 kilometres of you. But once we get this coronavirus stuff underhand, you know what I mean. You're in a lot of trouble.
I don't see too many Victorian police getting in the way of Brian Cage, man. It's not just a Victorian police, any police officer, especially if they're coming to, if he's coming to murder me. If he was I'm going to murder a wrestling podcaster, I think most people would be like, all right, cool, through you go. So next up we had the best friends versus Santana and Ortiz. We've already gone through the guys showing up in Sue's van. Best Friends dominated this match really for the majority of it. Santana and Ortiz got a little bit of offense back in. Can I just in the middle here? Sometimes I notice it, sometimes I don't. I don't think I've ever brought it up on the podcast, but it just kind of annoyed me tonight. And it's not just Aubrey that does it; it's all refs in the AEW. But the reactions to moves, like they almost do like Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone type.
Yeah, they do.
Like you're like, I know I sound like a moron when I talk like this from a kayfabe point of view, but they're professional wrestling referees. So surely seeing someone jump off the top rope shouldn't fill them with so much fear. You know what I mean? Like,
I really
takes me out of it.
I don't know if this will make it slightly better for you, but every time you see that and it bothers you, just think of the early days of TNA where there was a ref who it was like he had a gimmick, and his gimmick was to react when the wrestlers got hurt by, like, if they got thrown into the turnbuckle, he'd hold his back. And if, they got hit in the face, he'd hold his face like he was the one being hurt. So at least they're not doing that.
But it's not far off it. It's like, it's not that far off it, man. I don't like it's funny when these situations come up because I sound so much like JR or Jim Cornette, but it just I just notice it, and you probably shouldn't, right? Like, you shouldn't really be noticing the ref unless they're hitting a count.
Ideally, you shouldn't be noticing the ref, yeah.
But this was a pretty standard tag team match. I didn't see I didn't see what happened later on coming at all. I just thought at the end of this match when Best Friends won, I was like, oh, what are they doing with Santana and Ortiz? Like, I was like, oh, maybe they're going to do a road to redemption type story with them, where they're so, they're at the bottom of the barrel and they have to work their way up to the tag belts. But no, later on in the night, they after a Sammy Guevara promo that we'll get to later on, smashed the hell out of Sue's van.
I couldn't believe it. And then a little bit further later, they had Chucky T and Trent reacting to it. And Chuck had one of the great lines in wrestling history. And if it hadn't have happened on this night, it would have been the best line in the show, which is, not only did you destroy my friend's mum's van, which is just the beginning of the thing. And I was just like, what an incredible thing to say. Not only did you destroy my friend's mum's van, but you made me a liar.
Yeah, I promised Sue that we would look after this van.
And I love it because it is everyone has a friend whose mum makes them promise, because they don't trust their own child, to look after their possessions. Yeah. And that was perfect. And also it made me realize that I care about every single feud going on in AEW at the moment. Like, every single one I'm like totally into. Like Reba, Britt and Big Swole, Sammy and Matt Hardy, which obviously we'll get to, Dark Order. Like, I actually care about all of it.
Yeah, well, this was something that I didn't think I was. I mean, not that I didn't care about it. I was watching it and into it. But as soon as Santana and Ortiz went out and attacked Sue's van, I was like, oh, this is like, there was half of me that was like, oh man, that's the Best Friends are not going to be happy. And then the other half of me was like, this is ridiculous. Like, that, it's Sue's van. Like, if someone new had walked in, like if you had a girlfriend who wasn't into wrestling and she was like, why is everyone, and she watched this episode, this was the first episode that she watched, surely she would be like, why is everyone so obsessed with this van? I don't get it.
I mean, CM Punk had an incredible feud with John Cena, initially based on, was it Cena that it was initially based on spilling his Pepsi? When Punk was on commentary?
So. Yeah, I mean that was the very beginning of it.
And I think if you can have a feud that's that good based on spilling someone's drink, then you can definitely pull off. They destroyed my mum's car.
Yeah, true.
Particularly given AEW's like absolute like fetishization of arriving places in cars.
Oh, they love it. That was the other thing I was going to bring up as well. It's just like here is another. This is the Trent and Chucky mobile. Is Sue's like this is now their car. You could make a rock and roll wrestling style cartoon about AEW. Hey, if Tony Khan's listening, I'm sure it'll probably be out in a couple of weeks' time. Where it's just as much about the cars, like they all have their own little cars, because it's all about merchandising. So
you can see it as a McDonald's toy. That's the
or a line of Hot Wheels or something. Now that Matt Cardona is it Cardona?
Cardona.
Cardona. Right.
There you go. It writes itself. Cardona.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Next up, we had an MJF promo where essentially we got to his campaign headquarters, which is, I thought I was actually interested to get your opinion on the campaign headquarters.
It looked pretty legit to me. That was
it did actually look kind of legit.
It looked like they were working. The thing I noticed from the first thing I noticed, because I was sort of like, oh yeah, this is okay, was Lee, who he started berating, was taking all the green M&Ms out of the bowl.
Yeah.
Which is just a fantastic, like not referenced at all, but just visually there.
No, it was great. There's so MJF starts berating. Was it Lee? Did you say
Lee? Yeah,
yeah. Who has put a poster up incorrectly? Of course, they have a spirit level there, so MJF can check that the poster has been, and it's not even hung; like it's just been blue tacked to the wall.
MJF explaining that by saying, "Well, you would know what level is, except for the fact that you've left yours on the floor." As he picks it up, which is just terrific.
Which also insinuates that everyone on staff has a spirit level, so they can check all the posters. The girl that's on the team, I can't remember her name, but he wants to know what the results are of the polls, and she's about to start telling him, and he says, "No, you can only speak to me if you're smiling," which this is so close to. I mean, he's a bad guy, so saying bad things makes sense, but this is so close to the wind with, being... I don't know, man. Like, I feel like for some reason MJF can sort of say these things and get away with it, and it's not too bad. And I'm also not trying to have too much of a stick up my ass about things as well, but it just telling women to smile, like 4 weeks after the sort of end of the speaking out.
Look, it may have been an iffy decision.
Yeah, it's a little iffy, but he makes it work somehow. I was a little bit like, oh, but then I don't know. It's not that big a deal. But essentially, in the polls, he was like, he had 100% of people's vote, and John Moxley had, was it minus 800%?
It was minus either 80 or 800%.
And then eventually he says that at the end of the promo, he basically turns to the camera and speaks to John Moxley about the match this evening. Is that right?
And then they ask him, what will you do if Darby Allin wins the title? And he says, the 120-pound emo kid, that it sucked to have to wrestle him.
Yeah, and then that's the end of the promo. This was good, if
MJF's speaking, it's not going to be bad.
No, but he's so good. Like, it's that thing where, like an amazing sports person, where they're so good, if you're like LeBron James and you have a match where you score 16 points and have 7 rebounds and 4 assists, people will be like, not a great night from LeBron. But for anyone else, that's a really solid game of NBA basketball. It feels like that with MJF, that when he's not cutting the greatest promo of all time. And I'm guilty of this as well, where I'm like, that wasn't the best promo ever. So
I think comparing him at this stage to LeBron is a real it shows maybe how few Mount Rushmore talkers there are in wrestling, but it also shows just how good he is. Like he's definitely the best current active speaker.
Oh yeah, as far as promos are concerned, and then the promo that he did last week was so chock filled with little Easter eggs and that. But this was still, I mean, the green and M&Ms. I didn't actually pick up on that myself until you pointed it out. So I might go back and watch it again and see if I can find anything else. Next up, we had a promo from Matt Hardy, who he sort of talks about why he's come to AEW. Sort of talks about how he wants to be a father figure, teacher kind of person. He shouts out Private Party. He says that he's reached out to Sammy Guevara, who has thrown it back in his face, and so he doesn't want to help Sammy anymore. He wants to fight him. While he's cutting this promo, Sammy pops up from under the ring. Not sure how long he's been there, but anyway, he's up there.
Which we know from WWE that is the literal Christian hell under the ring.
Mm-hmm. But also Hornswoggle's house.
I was trying to think of a way to say that in a non-offensive way, but I couldn't. So good job. That's right.
You can't. I mean, that's where he lives, apparently, as far as WWE concerned. He's also CM Punk's brother as well. Never forget that. Steph, Shane, CM Punk, and Hornswoggle, all brothers and sisters.
And God,
that's kayfabe, brother. So Sammy comes out and is about to attack Matt Hardy, and then even though he's not going to do all of his characters anymore, he still somehow knows that Sammy's there. Turns around.
Which might just having been watched. He just may have watched wrestling before.
Well, that's true. I mean, he has been around wrestling for a long time. These guys have like a decent brawl. Like Matt Hardy took a bump he took a bump with his face to the ring post that initially I was like, oh, geez, that's pretty brutal. And I thought that was going to be the end of this spot. He put Sammy through a table, which was also like, Jesus Christ, these guys are really going for it for a Wednesday night. Sammy manages to get Matt knocked down again, gets him on a table. Sammy jumps up onto the stage and does a 480 frog splash off the stage.
It looked exceptionally cool.
Yeah, and then busts Matt wide open. That, I don't want to be a dick, that was blade job. Because you could see some of the blood on the table before Sammy hit it.
Yeah, but I think it
still looked cool. Like I only noticed it in the replay.
I spent a lot of time concerned about like Sammy's normal clothes, which are now ruined. He wasn't in his wrestling gear. I'm assuming that they're going to end up having a hardcore match at All Out, and for Matt Hardy at this age, I don't think if it's not going to be a cinematic match, I think a hardcore match is probably a good use of him. And Sammy desperately needs a win, and this was a good angle. This is like brutal, and it was different from everything else on the show tonight, which was a sort of more fun show. And this and I guess the title match were quite brutal. But yeah, I look forward to that match. I think All Out is shaping up to be something, which is cool.
Yeah. I hadn't even jumped to that conclusion yet that would be where these guys would end up. But yeah, you're right. It makes sense, and I'm into it. That would be Matt Hardy sort of reinventing himself into Terry Funk, becoming a hardcore specialist in his golden years of wrestling.
I mean, it's not a bad. Not that Matt Hardy's ever really been the promo that Terry Funk was, but it's not a bad comparison.
Yeah, I could be into that. It's I don't know. Matt Hardy in AEW is an interesting case study so far. You know, he hasn't been used the way that I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be top of the card kind of thing.
I mean, I think it's better what they've done than having him.
Yeah.
Matt Hardy versus Mox is not a.
Yeah, I know, right? Him shuffling around the ring.
The Stadium Stampede match was potentially
he was
the
great
best of the year. Like, it was very, very well. It wasn't a match. It was the best, in my opinion, the best cinematic match of the year.
Yeah. Well, in AEW, definitely.
Oh, yeah, I know it wasn't as good as Braun Strowman versus Bray, but
I was going to say the Viking Raiders versus Street Profits cinematic match from. I just remembered it then. I was trying to think of the worst match of the year, and then my brain was like, Damo, remember that match that you watched and like you almost wanted to stab yourself in the leg with something at the end of it? Anyway, we've got to stop bagging WWE on these. No, we don't. We can do what we want. Next, yeah. So anyway, I want to keep an eye on Matt Hardy and see how he's used, but I'm up for that. It's good to see Sammy back and just sort of wrestling and everyone sort of moving on, whether that's the right thing or not. Anyway, next up we had Cody and Matt Cardona versus more of the Dark Order. I'm not going to bother learning any of their names anymore except for Brody Lee and Colt Cabana because it just doesn't,
They're numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, Cardona didn't seem to have any ring rust or anything as far as I could see.
His presentation, like his symbol, like the MC symbol was the exact same as his presentation was basically Zack Ryder.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a little bit of Arrested Development. Like, I sort of hoped that this might be an opportunity for him not to be Zack Ryder. Because if he's going to come in and be, 2011 Zack Ryder, but also with action figures, I don't know if that's for me.
Yeah, I kind of, this was probably the part of the night that I was the least interested in by the end.
Yeah.
Or almost, look, if I'm going to be really brutally honest, probably from the time that this was announced. Like, basically, last week, the way that he sort of came in, that, and I know that I'm like, there's this thing about me and Warhorse, but it just, from a storytelling point of view, it just it did make Warhorse look a little weak, I think, in retrospect.
Yeah.
And also, this was all very convenient. It's like, and the Dark Order have attacked Cody, even though they've shown no interest in him at all. So we can have a tag team match, so Matt and Cody can, have their best friend-a-thon on national television, and that's cool. And I know that you've got him in, and I know he's got a big fan base. And I liked him in WWE. I don't hate him in AEW, but I felt the same way as soon as I saw him come out, and he looked almost exactly like the Brewski. I was like, okay, well, what am I? This is something that we've spoken about with the women's division, where we haven't really, you don't get introduced to anyone, so there's no reason to care. And with Cardona so far, it's just like, oh, well, you should know who he is.
Yeah, and I think,
okay,
having him present that way, like it's just not like Cody is the best pathos wrestler going. If that's what Matt Cardona is going to be, then he should be obviously they're building up the Dark Order as a heel factory. Like, if you've got Colt Cabana doing hey, these guys help you, have Matt Cardona and Colt Cabana being sort of stupid idiots who convince each other that the Dark Order are okay. Like, they would work well together. They'd be fine.
That's really good. Yeah.
I don't want to see Cardona with Cody. I don't want to see at this stage Zack Ryder having, a 30-minute marquee pathos, blood match, Dusty Rhodes special. Maybe they can get there. Like they've consistently done everything right on 2020 Nitro, but it's not. Yeah, it's undercooked at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been 2 weeks that he's been with the company, so who knows? But yeah, I'm sort of interested to see what value he does add to the roster, because at the moment I'm not really seeing where it is. It's not. I don't think it's at the top of the card where you've got Moxley, Allen, Cage, probably Hangman Page at some point as well. Maybe Kenny Omega. Like, I don't see Cardona fitting in there. So it's a mid card. So is it him versus Cody? Maybe. How long does it take to get to that? Like, do they, they can't just automatically turn on each other. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe a tag team is the way to go. Maybe, or, turning him heel with the Dark Order. But then it gets to the point where, like, literally half of the roster
it's the Dark Order, yeah.
the Dark Order.
I mean, just having him be if he's going to be a silly character, then let him be a silly character. But, I don't know if the broski is as fun as, other silly characters. Like, the best friends are silly but can get serious. The Butcher and the Blade are ridiculous. Like, they've got a lot of ridiculous characters that are a lot more compelling and different and,
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But anyway, this was something that I was looking forward to all week, and I think it delivered. We had Eric Bischoff on TNT for the first time in 20 years.
On Nitro, the man who invented
on Nitro. I know. It just felt like, you've got Tony Schiavone introducing Eric Bischoff to the stage on TNT.
And Chris Jericho's there.
And Chris Jericho's out there.
I've got to say that I just want it on the record that, like, a lot of people say a lot of things about Eric Bischoff. I personally think the man is a wrestling genius. I think, I think what he did is incredible. And I also think that no matter what you think on the wrestling genius spectrum, the guy is probably, he's one of the greatest all-time TV heel characters. And he's a great talker. And he's he plays smarmy so well.
Yeah, 100%. And he did that. He did that pretty well tonight. Not that he was a dick character. Like, I suppose he was like a face character in this little promo. But if you've listened to 83 Weeks, and we've got to stop mentioning other wrestling podcasts on our own podcast so people remember, oh, yeah, that's right, we can listen to that. But if you do listen to, I really enjoy listening to Eric talk on that podcast because he is so well-spoken. And I feel like with other podcasts in the same vein, there's a lot of things that just get made up.
Yeah.
If they can't remember. And he'll say things like, I don't remember. I don't actually remember. It feels like, I've heard the opposite about Eric Bischoff, but it feels like he's a pretty honest guy as well. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's always a nice guy, but but it seems like he's relatively honest.
It was good to see him on TV. Like, I think,
I really enjoyed it.
You could do a lot worse and the way it continues to be the way they use older veterans. Wasn't like, TNA bringing in Bischoff and Hogan and being like, hey, look, this is the biggest thing ever. It's like, the guy had like 6 lines and, was just there. Like, he was there to put over Orange Cassidy essentially, and he did it fantastically.
Yeah, he did it really well. So the debate was held like a presidential debate. And so initially Jericho takes a shot at the way Orange Cassidy is dressed. Orange Cassidy takes out a tie with the, what are they called? The little clip-on ties and puts it onto his T-shirt. after the first question, Jericho says that Orange Cassidy is a joke. All the sort of spiel that he's been doing about Cassidy for the last month or so, that he's like a novelty wrestler, and then after he beats him, he'll quit wrestling, go and get his job back at Jumper Juice, and Jericho will order his blueberry smoothie with pumpkin seeds and protein, and he won't give him a tip. And the reason why I bring that up is because Jericho loved that so much, and then him and Jake Hager high-fiving each other is on purpose lame, but I just loved how into their own shit they were.
Yeah, it was great.
It was awesome. Jericho says that he's the greatest wrestler of all time, and it's getting harder and harder to disagree with that.
Yeah.
Then the third question, there's a question about sea levels, which that's when our Orange Cassidy speaks for the first time, and basically reels off all of these facts that anyone under the age of 40 are well aware of about rising sea levels.
and Jericho being like, I don't care about that, and Orange Cassidy, being serious about it is like, remember when WWE had Daniel Bryan care about the environment, and they were like, he's the massive heel, he's evil, he cares. Yeah. Whereas this is like the guy that's cool, what everyone likes, also doesn't want the world to be destroyed.
Yeah,
it was very
cool. That's my favorite version of Daniel Bryan by a long way. And what I did love about it was that it wasn't hard to turn him heel by just saying he was vegan, and that maybe you shouldn't drink 3 liters of Coke in one sitting. And I loved that when he went to any other country, he was not a heel.
Yeah,
that he was 100% a face. Yeah, we love our American listeners, though. There's so Orange answers that really well. Question, there's a little bit more of Jericho basically, telling Orange Cassidy that he's a dickhead. And then there's a question, Eric asks the question, why does the match that's happening mean so much to you? And Orange Cassidy cuts Jericho off and just tells him to shut up, and then cuts this really great promo about why beating Chris Jericho means so much to him, and why the match should mean a lot to Jericho as well. Because imagine what happens if you, the greatest wrestler of all time, loses a match to a guy who puts his hands in his pockets.
It was exceptional. Like, he did it. He didn't over-emote. He wasn't ridiculous, but he explained why the match matters, why it matters to him, which is really important, and why it should matter to Jericho, which is just as important.
Yeah, man. I mean, you have heard him talk before, but I'd never really sort of heard him cut a promo like this before, and he's really good at that as well. So my love for Orange Cassidy rages on. Sorry, man.
That's all right. You keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, Chris and Jake get very angry about Orange Cassidy having his own opinions, and they essentially beat the hell out of him. Jericho.
Well, there's 2 great things before that. So Bischoff awards.
Oh, that's right.
The debate, and then Bischoff and Jericho start arguing, and Jericho's like, "I've hated you for 22 years," and Bischoff replies with, "It's been 24, and I'm aware of your feelings." And then Jericho goes, "I'm going to kick the shit out of you now," to Cassidy, and then he goes, "Get him, Jake." And Jake goes over, which is a spectacular, like, "I'm going to kick the shit out of you. Get him, Jake."
Yeah, it's a classic little dog, big dog sort of Warner Brothers cartoon type thing. Yeah, I completely missed that. Sorry, man. But anyway, I'm glad you have my back there. Yeah, so Jericho hits Cassidy with the Judas effect, and the best friends come out for the save, but the damage has been done by then. Making Jericho look very much like a awful, evil bad guy, and Orange Cassidy looking like a big baby face. So this was, for me, this was the highlight of the week, even though there was no real wrestling. It was exactly what I want. Just a really long promo, no wrestling, and wrestlers being funny. All the things that Jim Cornette hates.
Yep.
Next up, we had we had Britt Baker in her Chicago Bulls gear, in the corner of Reba, to take on Big Swole.
But the fact that they say, well, you've chosen someone, who are you going to, it's supposed to be a surprise to the audience. And then she goes, I've chosen Reba, whose actual name is Rebel. And then Reba's like, what? No, I can't. I'm not in my gear. I can't do that. I haven't wrestled for... And she's like, go on, just go. And the fact that she hasn't told her, essentially servant, that she's going to go out and wrestle. It's like a surprise for her as well, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, there's some real $1 Million Man Virgil stuff going on here. I couldn't take my eyes off Britt in the Michael Jordan singlet.
It was fantastic.
It's just so great. Because it's not, I don't have to, but I do the WWE show for us. And, it's interesting to see the different booking decisions the way that things are done between the two companies. And I think the major difference is subtlety with AEW compared to WWE. Like when something works and people talk about it, and we talked about, the promo where Britt compared herself to Jordan, but didn't actually really know what Michael Jordan had done. She just knows that's a measuring point for greatness, and she thinks she's great, so she's Michael Jordan. And then, it's not really mentioned again. She just wears a Michael Jordan singlet a couple of weeks later. And if it was WWE, that would be, you know what I mean? You'd have a promo with Michael Jordan the next week, and, Michael Cole would she'd be renamed Michael Jordan, or she'd be MJ Baker from then on, and you know what I mean? It's just those things where people, it's the difference between going, ugh, and yeah, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I think when Big Swole came out, Big Swole has a lot of a good attitude. She looks she just wants to kick the shit out of this smarmy person. She's not swole, ironically. She's quite small, but I can't wait to see this match. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I didn't really have an opinion either way, but through this feud, I've really gotten into Big Swole, and her music is there aren't a lot of themes that I notice in AEW. I like the Best Friends theme, Jericho's, which he wrote himself or made himself, and then I like Swole's. That's pretty much it. They're the only three that I really notice. And now we're already at the main event, man.
We're there.
For an episode where I before we started recording, I was I don't know if there's that much to go through. There's actually, as usual with Dynamite, there's actually quite a bit that's been packed into 2 hours of programming.
Yeah.
So next up we had, I'd be interested to know how were you into this match going into it?
I'm always interested when there's a chance that Moxley might lose, obviously. But I was interested in it. I was a bit I wanted Darby Allin to be in the ring in that way because I like him a lot more in the ring than I do out of it at the moment. And he really him coming out with the Moxley face with the hole in the eye was exceptionally cool, I thought. It reminded me why I liked Darby Allin so much.
Yeah, this felt like a return to form for Darby in the sense of, he less skateboarding and more sort of hardcore antics and weird face paint.
Yeah,
that's what we love about Darby, not not the skateboarding. There wasn't there was a sort of slow build to this match until Mox threw Allen off the stage into the ring post, and I was watching this with headphones on, and you could hear Darby's head hit the ring post with a thud, and it didn't sound good. Some really, really good, strong, tough wrestling, for a Wednesday night. I know there would be people who have watched these guys wrestle in other promotions where, they've had chainsaws to the head and stuff like that and be like, well, this is a kids match. But it's like, I really enjoyed it. Towards the end of the match, Darby Allin got... Sorry, man, you go.
No, I was convinced that the end of this match was going to be Ricky Starks and Cage coming out, and there will be a schmoz, because Taz mentioned about 62 times that they were banned, and I'm like, well, if they're banned, they're going to come out. Like, that's you wouldn't keep mentioning it. I was wrong.
Yeah. I the only thing I took away from that was like, I don't remember hearing that. It's like the first that I've heard of that. And sort of thinking like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why have they been banned when Ricky Starks copped a skateboard filled with nails to the back? You know what I mean? Like,
as well. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll record some sort of segment to justify that, in the next couple of weeks.
Surely.
So this match sort of went back and forth. Darby Allin actually got the upper hand on Mox after a while. He got a 2.5 count after a code red. Mox kicks out of it. So then Allin, a bit more offense, and then tries a coffin drop, gets a 2.5 count. And then eventually Mox comes back and he's trying to choke Darby out, because there's this sort of recurring story that he doesn't really want to hurt Allin. But obviously he wants to retain the heavyweight championship. So he's trying to sort of, Bret Hart, Stone Cold this situation and choke him out. But Allin comes back. Mox then hits a pile driver, which Allin kicks out of again. And then eventually you can, they sort of, I've got to say, JR and Tony and Taz did a really good job of sort of conveying that Mox was concerned about hitting the paradigm shift on his little buddy.
Yeah.
But in the end, he has to retain the title, which he does. And then the only other thing that we see is it cuts backstage, and MJF is having a boss hog from the Dukes of Hazzard style temper tantrum about what's just happened, because cutting back to his promo earlier, he was hoping that he could roll up Darby Allin, so Darby Allin would win, so he would have an easy championship match.
And I think now, hopefully, AEW, the one thing they have been quite bad at, other than not introducing characters, is following up when someone loses. Like, they're getting a little bit better, but now it's like, well, what is Darby going to do? Is he going to go beat Cody? Like, is that the match? Doesn't feel like it.
No.
But maybe that's where they're going. Like, they need to make sure they follow up with him, because he's obviously one of the people that is a potentially transcendent star. And, you can't have an episode that's built around, well, hopefully he wins because he's easier to beat than Jon Moxley. Then he gets beaten by Jon Moxley and hugged by Jon Moxley at the end. Over his own, hugged unconsciously, which was a weird look. But and while the person who wanted him to win, so he'd be easier to beat, has a temper tantrum.
Yeah, I still enjoyed it though. I would have, going into this match, I would have been like, this is an okay episode of Dynamite. Like, I've enjoyed it, but I felt like this match really put the button on it, on a good episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a title match, and it felt like a big match. They didn't. It wasn't a cheap, it wasn't a finger poke of doom. It wasn't a, squash match. It was a big match.
Yeah, No, it was done well. And like the thing with Darby Allin is that, he is a baby, which they kind of protected him on commentary again a little bit with that as well, pointing out how young he is and essentially reminding you that, like, don't worry, he's young, he'll get another opportunity. Don't stress that, he's getting buried or anything here. But yeah, that was it. That was this week in AEW Dynamite.
Thank you for listening.
Oh, right.
Cool. Do we have anything more to say? There was the women's tag titles tag thing on. I don't know if you watched it on.
It was on YouTube. I haven't had a chance to check any of it out. Do you know what's been happening with that?
Look, I felt that I should bring it up just because I had a minor meltdown about the Funkadactyl coming back. The Funkadactyl's not back. It's okay. She lost. Nyla Rose punched her, and then she tweeted the other Funkadactyl, Naomi, on saying, like, I'm not with AEW. Tell Vince for a Funkadactyls reunion. And it's like, no, don't mention that.
Well, it's already happening. It'll already this week on SmackDown. Expect to see the Funkadactyls back.
Brodus Clay is going to come back as like Lord Tensai's junior.
Oh my god! All of these names are giving me a brain aneurysm. Lord Tensai, Brodus Clay, the Funkadactyls. Jesus Christ!
I just look forward to Lord Tensai debuting on AEW Dynamite, answering Cody's TNT challenge. Actually, that's what we haven't done. Next week, Cody versus Scorpio Sky, which was sort of alluded to.
Oh, yeah, I did have that in my notes, but I forgot to point it out. Yeah, Scorpio Sky challenged Cody Rhodes for a title.
Scorpio Sky's going to win that match. I'm not. Yeah, I suspect that due to the social issues and the fact that he was early on, he was someone that sort of came out of nowhere and looked like he was going to be big, and they've sort of taken him a bit off the boil, I guess. And they've been criticised for just having all white champions. I suspect they're going to have Scorpio Sky win and Cody turn heel. That would be a guess. It might be a bit quick. Like maybe there'll be a disqualification or something and then it goes to All Out. I think Cody is like hurtling towards losing. I don't think it's time yet, but I suspect there may be some other pressures on them. We've got Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy in the $7,000 obligation match. Who have you got?
I really want Orange Cassidy to win this, but for like not just because I'm a 12-year-old boy trapped in a 40-year-old's body, but I know that Chris is going to put Orange Cassidy over.
Yeah,
at some point. That's what he does. He's not. I'm not going to name other wrestlers because it'll just piss people off. But he's not the kind of guy. We've spoken about this, about how much of a team player he is. I just get the feeling that it won't. I think Cassidy will win because then you can have the, you can have the tiebreaker at
All Out
at the pay-per-view at All Out.
And look, like that might be a three-way tag with Santana and Ortiz, given that best friends, Santana and Ortiz. Yeah. Like, just who knows? But I agree with you. I think Cassidy's going to not pay $7,000. Hangman Page and Kenny Omega versus Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus.
Oh, cool. Didn't we just see this like last week? Or
I think there was extra people involved.
Yeah, there was extra people. This would be a good match. This would be a really good match. Like the guy, they won't win. Jesus, Damian, use your words. Jurassic Express won't win.
Yep, I think that's probably right. Grayson and Evil Uno versus the Carl Jung Bucks.
The Carl Jung Bucks. Yeah, they're the Young Bucks will tap into the collective unconscious, and they will win that match.
I believe so. I can't believe they're having tag team appreciation night without the Butcher and the Blade. But anyway, that's fine. And there are going to be appearances by the Rock and Roll Express. So I imagine like Ricky Morton's going to give someone a Canadian destroyer. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, and it will be hosted by FTR.
Yeah. That actually sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good, hey?
Yeah. Rock and Roll Express were actually still wrestling on NWA Power, so that could be another couple of dudes who have gone to AEW and probably have to do less work for a better paycheck, which good for them. But just with each passing week, I'm getting less and less hopeful that NWA are going to come back, which is sad.
I'm sure they'll be back.
I think they'll do something with the belts. Like they've got those, they've got the NWA championship, and so there'll be something. But where the power comes back on, I don't know. But anyway, that's for a completely different podcast. I just completely derailed it then at the end. Sorry. Cool, man. Well, we're at our usual hour and 5 minutes that we seem to do every episode, so I think it's probably as good a time as any to sign off. There's a lot of you guys listening. I have to apologize for my lack of English capability on this episode. I really am. But if you like the podcast, any of our podcasts, which is this one, the WCW Nitro reviews that we're doing, reconsidering, which I love doing, WWE Weekly, which I do not love doing, but I do them anyway, so you don't have to watch them. And you can rate and review us. Tell your friends, follow us on social media, and we'll be back next week with another episode of AEW Dynamite.
See you then.
See you, dude.
Bye.